FiiO FH7S, that's the topic of today's review. Of course, it's in the title, it's in the thumbnail. Let's just jump into it. Hey friends, welcome back to another video on Giz Audio, and today we have the FH7S by FiiO. Now, you guys might think, is this an upgrade of the FH5S because it has a similar naming scheme and also similar design? No. Absolutely not. It's totally, completely different style of tuning. If anything, this should have been named like the FD5S or the FD7S because it has more similar signature to the FD line of FiiO IEMs. Before we jump into the sound analysis, if you want to see the unboxing of this to see what you get when you buy one, I'll leave the unboxing video down in the description below. There's quite a lot of accessories that comes in a FiiO IEM, so I suggest you go watch that video to see just all you're gonna get. Now let's jump into the sound, starting with the bass. Now the bass on this is quite dynamic. It hits with distinction. The amount or power is also really nice. It's gonna satisfy some bass heads out there. The one biggest issue I have with it though is that it is not cleanly separated from the lower mids at all. It bleeds into the lower mids, creating this kind of bloat sensation. The bass control is just not that well done. I did try to EQ down the bloatiness of it and it sounds so much better. So if you do own this set and you want to see the full potential of the bass, I suggest you do EQ down that 300 to 500 hertz to kill the bloatiness, and you'll hear how open everything sounds, and of course hear the full potential of this quite good bass. On to the mid-range. Like I said again, the lower mids is quite bloated, so male vocals sound boomier and warmer than they should. They don't come across the most natural sounding. Female vocals are much better because the upper mid-range on this is actually quite correct. Female vocals comes across quite lively and energetic, though again plagued by a little bit of bloatiness. Definitely you notice the bloat more on male vocals, but on female vocals it is there as well. Not so much, but it's there. I would say if FiiO tones that down a little bit, you know, shove the bass back to below 400 or below 300 hertz, below 300 would be the best, then the vocals are gonna come alive much more, male and female both. Next we have the treble area, and the treble here is actually well done, it's well extended, has good amount of treble as well. It can be sibilancy and fatiguing on very few songs. Now when I listen to this IEM around 100-200 songs, I only notice fatiguingness on very select few artists. If you have a library that consists a lot more of those higher frequencies, a lot of airy female vocals for example, or Vocaloid, then you might feel more sibilances than most people. If you have a library that is more towards the low end or just the mids in general, then you won't feel any sibilances coming from the treble area. So to summarize the tuning really quickly, from the upper mid range to the treble area, FiiO did extremely well. Just the low end, the bloatiness of the bass, that needs fixing. That's the only thing I have a complaint about, and arguably it affects the sound so much. So it's not really a small complaint, it's more of like, if you fix this, the IEM is gonna be amazing. If you don't fix this, the IEM is gonna be a lot less amazing. A lot of people do love FiiO's amount of bass, the FD3 to FD5 type of tuning. I do understand, but in terms of mid-range correctness, this level of bass is just a little bit too much. Now, a signature like this can easily work. For example, Soft Ear's Twilight also has quite a bit of warmth coming in from the bass, but it is controlled and well balanced enough from the amount of upper mids and the treble that the Twilight has to make the vocals still feel correct and natural. The FH7S on the other hand goes for a similar signature to that, but the bass is just a little bit too much, a little bit too into the mid-range. Just gotta tone that back a little bit, and with the amount of details that this thing has, we'll touch on details in a little bit, it would be a really good IEM. Now let's touch on the different tuning nozzles provided with this IEM. The red nozzle is the bass boost nozzle. Now it doesn't quite boost the bass as much as it just cuts the treble down a little bit. Now this one for me felt like it has the least amount of change when compared to the balanced nozzle. You feel the treble going down just a little bit, but ultimately doesn't do too much. The treble nozzle on the other hand does change the tuning in a more significant way than the bass one does. The treble nozzle basically just boosts up the treble. It gives the signature an overall more well-balanced feel, which I do prefer over the balanced nozzle. But all in all, is it a massive change to the signature itself? No, none of the nozzles significantly change the signature. It's just a slight treble tweak. The bass one drops it by a little, the treble one adds a little bit of treble. That's pretty much it. Next, let's touch on the technical performance, detail, soundstage, and imaging. Okay, so details, let's bring up my detail scale right here. FiiO lands right around, I would say right around the timeless, if not a little bit less than that, docking some point for mid clarity, but all in all, it is quite a resolving IM. Good levels of details. The stage is also not enclosed as well. I never once felt claustrophobic while listening to FH7S. Now it's not the widest sounding stage out there, but it is really competent. Imaging is just alright, and that's mostly because of the tuning choice. Imaging on here can be much better with correct tuning, but yes, soundstage and detail, great. On to the comparison segment. Now the FH7S is priced in an awkward zone where not a lot of IEMs live here, but is sandwiched by really good tuning IEMs on both ends. On the cheaper ends, around $300, you have the Blessing 2 and you have the Blessing 2 Dust. Both have amazing details for the price and top tier tuning. And on the $500 end, you have the SA6, you have the Oracle, you have the Variations, all of which are better tuned than the FH7S. So where does this fit then? Where does the FH7S fit in the market? I would say it does have one niche, and that one niche is bass heads. If you love bass and you want a lot of warmth, a lot of bass with a fairly well-balanced signature, because you do get a lot of upper mids and the treble area, and if you've tried the FD3 and the FD5 and you love both of those signatures, then yes, I can recommend the FH7S to you guys, to those people who fits that criteria. Just keep in mind, male vocals especially are gonna be quite unnatural and quite bloated. But if you already tried the FD3, FD5, then you already know that signature really well. And if you like that, again, yes, I do recommend the FH7S. Now, unfortunately, for any other reason, I cannot recommend the FH7S at this time. I would say though, if FiiO ever makes another version of this and they fix the tuning and keep the same detail level, then it's a great IEM at $400 something, really competitive even. But for now, if you want a neutrally tuned IEM or you want a correct sounding mid-range, then I suggest going for either the Blessing Twins or the SA6 Oracle and Variations. For the Blessing, if you still want a lot of bass, I suggest you go with the Blessing 2 Dust version. And on the top end, any of the three would do. The SA6 has a lot of bass, also with a bass boost switch as well. The Oracle has quite nice bass too. The Variation has really good bass, though more focused on this sub bass, so not as much mid bass. If you need mid bass, SA6 and Oracle. If you want just a lot of sub bass and really good sub bass, the Variation is the way to go. Alright, that's it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a favorite FiiO IEM, leave that down below. I know mine is the FHE Eclipse, but if you have one, leave that down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, subscribe, bye.
Bye.